Hey guys, sorry I haven't made a new video this year. I've actually been working on a new one for a while, but I scrapped a lot of it partway through to rework it. It's my longest video yet, so look forward to that in the future. But the biggest reason was that I actually made a short film. I produced it, wrote it, and directed it, and while recording this, I'm at the end of the post-production process, so I'm incredibly excited to share that with the world once it's ready. I make these videos because I love movies, and like so many people, my goal is to make movies one day, so every step that gets me closer to that goal is very exciting. All that being said, I still found time to watch a ton of movies this year. Overall, I'd say it was a good year for movies. A lot of drama and nonsense surrounding the industry at large, streamers being largely awful, audiences taking pictures of the screen and just behaving poorly, and so much more. But the movies themselves were pretty good. I think one of my biggest takeaways from this movie year was that no matter how bleak at times the future of cinema continues to look, great films will always find a way to shine through. From blockbusters to genre films and independent films, art persists, and that's pretty great. I won't waste your time any longer, let's get into it.
Vă prezint o producție de Hollywood.
Eggers is one of my guys. I love his hyper-commitment to period-accurate myths and fables, bringing to life these wild creatures and worlds with a fresh sincerity that is severely lacking in modern cinema. I've known about the original film from the 1920s for quite a while, that Murnau made Nosferatu because he couldn't secure the rights to Bram Stoker's Dracula, and some of the legal issues that ensued, which included a judge ordering all copies of the film to be destroyed at the time. What I didn't know, since I had never seen the original film, is that Nosferatu is essentially a one-for-one copy of Dracula. I had always figured it was more of a riff or subversion of the material, but nope, it's pretty much just Dracula with very minor differences. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but very early on I realized what was going on, and it allowed me to view it through that lens. It's not a traditional horror movie, but I think Eggers does an excellent job of creating a looming sense of dread that washes over the entire film from start to finish, really cementing the terror that this lurid creature brings into the lives of these characters. It's a wonderfully detailed film, with some stunning sequences and fantastic performances, from Lily Rose Depp specifically. Bill Skarsgård is unrecognizable though, and if I didn't know he was in this movie, I would have no clue who that was. My only issue is that because this is essentially a Dracula movie, I couldn't get the other Dracula films out of my head, specifically Coppola's Dracula film. I know there's a ton of Dracula films, and people favor one over the other, but that is the specific one that I have a deep, deep love for. It's one of the craziest and most visually inventive films I've ever seen, so for me personally, it's tough competition. But to Eggers' credit, he makes the story enough of his own, creating a more complex psychosexual narrative that gives more agency to Ellen, and marries the horror and romanticism in new and exciting ways that allows for us to not only explore her sexuality, but her trauma in richer ways. It could also be pretty funny too. It got a few genuine laughs out of the crowd. Eggers is on a heater, and I can't wait to see what he does next. If you've seen any of my previous best of videos, you know I'm a pretty big fan of Tatsuki Fujimoto, creator of Chainsaw Man. I think he's one of the most exciting and inventive mangaka working today, and Look Back is no exception. A one-shot manga written by Fujimoto in 2021, it follows the story of a young girl and her rivalry-turned-friendship with a fellow artist in school. What makes Fujimoto's work so great is his ability to combine over-the-top and abrasive humor with deeply sincere and personal moments. At only 58 minutes long, this brief but beautiful story of two young girls finding meaning in each other's art and pushing the other to be better is a truly special film that director Kiyotaka Uchiyama renders with an incredible attention to detail. What in fact makes this film so impactful is its brevity. It's a story about how precious time is, and that short runtime highlights how quickly these deeply impactful moments in our life can slip through our fingers, but that in no way diminishes the impression they might leave on us. The section of the film in which we get to watch these two girls draw and grow together is nothing short of stunning. I could sit with them for hours, but we know that time is ever fleeting, and the film does not hold back when delivering emotional gut punches to further emphasize that point. Fujimoto's work is always autobiographical to some extent, but never more so here, in a film that is directly dealing with the creative process. Here I see this film as not only about the gift of artistry, but the gift of love, and how lucky we are to not only have love for our passions, but love for other people, and how one has a direct effect on the other. It's important we share those gifts with one another. Those are not things to be taken for granted, no matter how tough our lives become. The film's exploration into those many nuances that mold us as artists and people are so genuine that it was almost too painful to watch at times. But that's Fujimoto's gift, hitting that perfect balance. Enjoy the time with those that mean the most to you. Hold them tight. Between the Temples, directed by Nathan Silver, is a film in which Jason Schwartzman plays a grief-stricken cantor with a crisis of faith, who befriends an older woman looking for her bat mitzvah. This odd little dark comedy, beautifully shot by the always reliable Sean Price Williams, DP of Good Time and director of The Sweet East, is as warm as it is stressful, a hilarious screwball comedy that balances its heavier side gracefully, creating a fuzzy and intimate atmosphere that hits you like a truck by the end. I love the way the film explores modern Judaism not only from a strictly religious standpoint, but from a familial one as well. Schwartzman has been on an absolute roll recently, and it's been great to see him continue that here. The last 30 minutes genuinely stressed me the fuck out, and I loved it. One of the best surprises of the year. As a big fan of Alice Rohrwacher's film Happy as Lazaro, I was eagerly anticipating this one. An adventure film told through the lens of Italian neorealism with multiple film stocks and aspect ratios that explores Italy's past and present, as well as the history of the medium itself. Alice's story of a heartbroken archaeologist and grave robber searching for meaning after the passing of his girlfriend is a tragic and gorgeous film, filled with so many crushing and equally thrilling moments. Josh O'Connor, having a career year, follows in the tradition of some of our greatest actors, like Al Pacino and Elliot Gould, as dirty men looking for purpose. It's a great performance, which is mostly delivered in pretty convincing Italian. There is an unbelievable texture to this film, as it seems to occupy this otherworldly space in which Earth and the unknown are in constant conversation. It feels like heaven is just a reach away. I don't love everything about the film, however. I think it has a bit of a pacing issue during certain stretches, but when this movie works, there's very little better. So many small moments of profound beauty. The boat sequence towards the end is one of the best of the year, and it features an ending that truly blew me away. A great film worth visiting. No film this year has made its presence quite known like The Brutalist, a dizzying 3.5-hour micro-epic, as I've heard it described, about the story of a mid-century Hungarian architect fleeing Europe for America at the chance at a new life. This behemoth of a film is one of the most exciting and formally thrilling movies I've seen in quite some time. One not afraid of its epic ambitions with act breaks, title cards, an intermission, and of course that gorgeous 70mm cinematography. What's so impressive about the film is the way in which it balances its more monumental moments with long stretches of intimacy, as it really is a film only dealing with a few characters. And those characters are played wonderfully by Adrian Brody, Guy Pearce, and Felicity Jones. as well as a great supporting cast. But Brody and Pierce specifically develop a compelling relationship that is at the center of conflict for most of the runtime. Seeing how that dynamic plays out is one of the film's greatest strengths. The film is wisely split into two halves. The first half of this film is an absolutely riveting experience, with an unbelievably propulsive score leading the charge. Watching Laszlo's journey from the boat to New York as a man with humble intentions, back to the headstrong architect he once was, hell-bent on seeing his vision through, is just so exciting to watch. The second half, while still good, lacks the same focus, and its themes become a bit more muddled. And it's a film tackling so many themes: the American dream, drug addiction, generational trauma, the cost of pursuing art, and the battle between art versus patron. In many ways, it's metatextual. Courbet seems to have drawn a lot of influence from PTA's There Will Be Blood and The Master, among other films. So much so that Pierce's character, Harrison Lee Van Buren, seems to be a mix of Daniel Plainview and Lancaster Dodd, which is not a bad thing. He's a great character. And like The Brutalist, those PTA movies also have grand ambitions, but while PTA's films are both challenging and intentionally loose in their narrative, there always seems to be a clear thematic through line that Anderson is pursuing, where I think Courbet's script is perhaps wound a bit too tight, that he leaves no room for experimentation, and struggles to balance all of these ideas into a cohesive narrative, leading to a thought-provoking but admittedly confounding coda that leaves a little too much room for interpretation. All that being said, I do think this is a largely phenomenal film. I've seen it twice in theaters now, and both times I was fully engaged in the world Courbet had created. Even if he doesn't fully land the plane, I really did love the scope and ambition of this film, with a number of truly stunning sequences. We need more filmmakers willing to take that risk. After Yorgos Lanthimos' career year with Poor Things, somehow his most accessible film to date, he's back in full-on freak mode with Kinds of Kindness, an anthology film of 3 shorts featuring the same cast of actors, all tied together by their exploration of devotion. How and why we devote ourselves to other people, and at what lengths we will go to prove our devotion to people in a position of power over us. Yorgos pulls no punches in this sharp, tense, and hilarious film that thrives in its uncomfortability. After years of building goodwill, he seems to be getting a sick sense of pleasure out of practically taunting his growing fan base here. Yorgos is clearly cynical about the world. His films see humans for the worst that we can offer, and here he interrogates that perverse human nature and our craving for human connection with an unwavering sense of wit and determination. Jesse Plemons delivers 3 unbelievable performances, and Emma Stone continues to prove that her and Yorgos' creative partnership is one of the best collaborations in modern cinema. There is this wonderful symmetry between these shorts, as certain symbols and motifs carry over from one story to another, creating an uneasy connection between all of them. One thing I really love about this film is that each story feels like it has a fully fleshed out world that we can spend much more time in. The second short specifically alludes to a much more bizarre story at the fringes that could very well be its own film, but just getting a peek into that world adds to the tension and excitement. The second story also has the funniest scene of the year, bar none. I don't love all 3 shorts to the same level, but thankfully because they're all relatively short, the sum of its parts greatly outweighs any small issues I have. Overall, a fantastic film that marries Yorgos' old and new sensibilities into something fresh and thrilling. I know this was a pretty divisive film, but I had an absolute blast with it. Sean Baker's dark romantic screwball comedy about a loudmouth stripper who gets involved with the son of a Russian oligarch is an absolute riot of a time. Anora is a playful, loose, hilarious, and deeply moving film, and Sean Baker effortlessly balances the tone of the film to create something deeply special. I think the trick of this movie is that its narrative is surprisingly straightforward, with 2 halves that build off each other quite effectively. The swooning romanticism of the first half met by the frantic comedic energy of the second. But within the narrative are incredibly well-realized and eccentric characters that pop off the screen. Mikey Madison is obviously fantastic. She gives such a committed and non-judgmental performance that proves she is one of her generation's next great actors. But the supporting cast of this film is so good. Mark Edelstein, Karen Karagulian, Vache Tovmason, and especially Yura Borisov, whose Igor develops a complicated relationship with Annie, which leads to an ending that left me stunned. Probably my favorite ending of the year, one that tied the movie together perfectly. Baker is a filmmaker I've talked about before, Red Rocket was on my best of 2021 list, and here he adds to his recent string of successes to cement his place as one of our great independent filmmakers. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't love the first Dune film. I thought it was a slow and cold film that kept its distance and was painfully straightforward. I wasn't huge on the brutalist design of the world he had made either, and I struggled to find anything to latch onto. But with Dune 2, however, Denis was cooking with gas. The characters are much more fleshed out, the world feels much more alive, and thankfully, this is the film where everything really happens, since so much of the first Dune was set up. This film is truly a visual marvel, with an endless stream of gorgeous set pieces. It's just so refreshing to watch a blockbuster film with this much craft and care that feels like it was made by real people and is genuinely interested in challenging its audience. Thematically, I really loved how the film explored religious fanaticism and colonialism, and was really surprised at how those themes bled into the film's central relationships to create a rich and complex narrative that built up to a genuinely breathtaking final act. Can't wait for part 3. Sorry, Dune heads, but Furiosa is the best sand movie of 2024. I consider Fury Road to be my favorite action movie of all time, and maybe the best action film ever made, so Furiosa was never going to live up to those astronomical standards. But just because it's not as good as Fury Road, doesn't mean it's not an incredibly well-made and thrilling action film. This movie is just such a good time, wonderfully composed, with a clear and vivid visual language that makes every frame pop off the screen. I think it's very cool how this film is structured differently than Fury Road as a fable about Furiosa, giving us glimpses into her life that help us understand who this wasteland folk hero truly might have been. Anya Taylor-Joy is a certified movie star here, and Chris Hemsworth gives maybe his best performance to date. I loved both of them in this a lot. It's not a perfect movie. I picked up on some spotty CGI compared to the first film, and I think there's a bit too much overplotting that further complicates the story in relation to Fury Road. But these things feel so minor when the sum of its parts is one of the most creative and stunning action films in years. It's a crime this film flopped in theaters, but I was there in IMAX opening night, so when people try to claim this film in 5 to 10 years, I'll be shaking my head knowing y'all were late to the party. And before we get to number 1, here are a few honorable mentions. Trap, A Different Man, Red Rooms, Hundreds of Beavers, Nickel Boys, The First Omen, and I'm Still Here. Challengers was the most electric and exciting new film I saw in theaters last year. I remember smiling with joy while in real time, realizing I was watching an instant classic. Luca has been on a heater for the better part of a decade now, and with his erotic tennis thriller, it might be my favorite film of his to date. Challengers is a thrilling, sexy, and visually inventive drama with 3 incredibly complicated and brilliantly written performances, courtesy of screenwriter Justin Kuritsky's, the genius behind Potion Seller. What Kuritsky's clearly understood better than most is that tennis and sex share so much in common, as Tashi tells Art and Patrick during one of their first interactions, how her match earlier that day was more like making love than actually playing tennis. It was a conversation. And Lucas spends the entire runtime reinforcing that idea, as every move and inflection of our characters' rackets and bodies signifies a greater desire, sexual impulse, or deeper emotion bursting out of them. Sex becomes tennis, a propulsive back and forth of wills and determination to come out on top, and tennis becomes sex, an erotic battle using every inch of the human body to create symmetry with your opponent. In terms of current filmmakers, I personally think Luca is one of the best at shooting the human body. The physicality his actors exude in each of his films is so tactile, and perhaps never more so than here. He understands the importance of movement and touch within the frame, and the 3 leads here all perfectly amplify that sexuality and physicality. Zendaya is a fantastic anchor who keeps the film steady, even with her own messy emotional turmoil, exuding the star power and dominance necessary to make us understand why these men would immediately fall for her. Mike Feist is sharp and complicated, a puppy dog with a bite, who while presenting innocent is as calculating and manipulative as anyone else. But the standout to me is unquestionably Josh O'Connor, giving maybe my favorite performance of the year. His specific physicality, the way he carries himself on and off the court, is unmatched. At once an aloof slouch who somehow oozes sexuality and confidence, physically and emotionally dominating every space he occupies. A jealous, impulsive, and deeply caring character, too genuine for his own good. And each character's traits show up in the way they play tennis too, further connecting the relationship between sex and tennis, another brilliant touch by Luca. The movie works so well for so many reasons, but one of them is that each character is so flawed and layered that you can reasonably argue that each of them is either in the right or wrong equally by the end, and to me that is so impressive. Each scene is like a nesting doll of nuance and emotions that further complicates their messy love triangle. And the third act of this film is a straight shot of adrenaline. It's genuinely like watching live-action anime. Luca continuously upping the stakes of the match until it comes to the most satisfying climax that is further emphasized by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's brilliant score. I love how Luca can make films that are so visually unique from one another while still feeling distinctly his. By far, my favorite film of the year. And those are my favorite movies of the year. But like always, here's a few more favorites of the year. I honestly didn't watch that much television this year, so I don't have a lot to say about it, but yeah, Smiling Friends Season 2, Show of the Year. But in lieu of that, I decided to add some awards to this year's video. So without further ado, here are some Scrizzy Awards, aka the Scrizzies. Best Theatrical Experience of 2024. Interstellar in 70mm IMAX. Best non-2024 movie I saw for the first time in 2024. The Young Girls of Rochford. Best Costume Design and Production Design. Hundreds of Beavers. Best Editing Transitions. Drive Away Dolls. Best Soundtrack. I Saw the TV Glow. Most Erotic Scene of the Year. The Phone Call Scene from Hitman. Best Film featuring Cooper Trapp. That goes to Trap. Best Scream. Leah Sado in The Beast. Longest Legs. That goes to Katie O'Brien at the end of Love Lies Bleeding. Best Musical Scene. That goes to Nick Cage in Long Legs. Best Line Readings. That goes to Megalopolis.
So go back to the club.
I did, however, listen to a ton of new albums, so here are my favorites. The Cure, Songs of a Lost World. No Worries, Why Lord. MJ Lenderman, Manning Fireworks. Julie, My Anti-Aircraft Friend. Makami, Rich Haitian. Father John Misty, Mahash Mashana. New Dad, Madra. Magdalena Bay, Imaginal Disc. The Lemon Twigs, A Dream Is All We Know. And number 1, Jordy Greep, The New Sound. Greep's satirical jazz rock fusion album, bursting with musical influences from all over the world, is one of the funniest and most inventive albums I've heard in quite a while. I've always somewhat enjoyed Black Midi, but now with them on a permanent hiatus, frontman Jordy Greep feels much looser here, allowing for a more playful, lush, and textured album that only becomes richer with each listen. It's undoubtedly weird, eccentric, and abrasive, and not for everyone, but if you can get on its level, it's an absolute blast. Yeah, and that's it for this year. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree Game of the Year. Can't wait for more Elden Ring in 2025, and for more great movies. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've made it all the way to the end, I'd love if you can like and subscribe. It would mean a lot. I'm excited to bring you all new stuff in 2025. Let me know down below what your favorite film of 2024 was. Have a good one.